Picture this. You're sitting in a pretty high-stakes meeting.
Mm-hmm.
The room is totally quiet.
Oh, yeah. Setting the scene.
Right. And suddenly, someone asked for your opinion on this really complex project. And you know the answer. The knowledge is definitely right there in your head.
But getting it out is the hard part.
Exactly. Because as soon as you open your mouth, you just hear yourself rambling. You're using all these filler words, and you completely lose your train of thought.
It's the worst. We have literally all been there.
It really is a terrible feeling. Well, welcome to another deep dive. We are so glad you're joining us today. I'm super excited to jump into this one because we're focusing on something that affects, well, pretty much everyone who works with other people.
It really does. It's such a universal experience. And usually when people want to fix that, that rambling feeling and sound more professional, they actually take the exact wrong approach.
Okay, let's unpack this. Our mission today is highly practical. We're looking at this incredibly insightful source document, and it's called How to Speak Like a Professional in English.
It's a great read.
It really is.
Yeah.
And the core premise here is that so many of us, whether English is your first language or, your fifth pace, we have this massive misconception about what professionalism actually sounds like.
Right. We tend to think we need to put on this heavy, uncomfortable, verbal tuxedo.
Yes, a verbal tuxedo. We think we have to sound incredibly formal, maybe a little stiff, and use the absolute biggest words we can find in a thesaurus.
And that is the trap. I mean, we assume complexity equals intelligence. Like, if we sound complicated, people will just think we're smart.
But the document kind of shatters that idea, doesn't it?
Totally. The source material points out that if you look at the most respected communicators in really any field, they don't wear that verbal tuxedo at all.
Right.
They just wear a very well-tailored suit. It's comfortable, it fits their personality, but above all, it's precise. So the real goal of professional speech isn't formality, it's precision.
Precision. I love that.
Yeah.
So if the goal is precision rather than just, tossing out fancy words, how do we actually get there? Like, what's the foundation?
Well, the document breaks this down into 3 core pillars. First is clarity, meaning your ideas are understood the very first time you say them.
So no one has to stop you and say, what did you mean by that?
Exactly. No repeating. Second is tone, which is all about sounding confident, but always maintaining respect for the listener.
Okay, clarity and tone.
And third is structure, which is just the logical ordering of your thoughts. When those 3 pillars are working together, the friction between your brain and your listener's brain drops to zero.
Drops to zero. Wow.
Yeah, and that is what true professionalism actually sounds like.
I want to dig into that first pillar really quickly, clarity, because, you can't build a precise message if your basic building blocks are blurry. Let's look at the actual words we choose.
Yeah, the vocabulary upgrades.
Right. The source has this whole section on vocabulary upgrades. And I found it fascinating because it doesn't ask you to memorize a massive dictionary, does it?
Not at all. It's actually much simpler than that. The trick is just to identify a small handful of everyday, vague words that you probably use all the time and intentionally swap them out.
Swap them for more precise alternatives.
Exactly. It's about finding the accurate word, not the longest word.
Let's run through some of the specific examples from the source because the contrast is really eye-opening. Take a word like bad. People say, oh, this situation is bad.
Right, but bad is such a vague emotional bucket. It could mean anything.
Yeah, and the document suggests using words like suboptimal or problematic or concerning.
Just think about the difference in how those land. If you tell a team this process is bad, it sounds like a complaint.
It feels personal.
It does. But if you say, this process is suboptimal, you're diagnosing a mechanical issue. You've removed the personal emotion and just focused on the function.
That makes total sense.
And another huge culprit is the word stuff or things.
Oh, man, I am definitely guilty of that. Like, I have some stuff to handle, or let's talk about things.
It's so common. We all do it. But stuff forces the listener to guess what you actually mean. It damages your credibility because it makes you sound like you aren't fully organized.
Wow, yeah. So what should we use instead?
The source recommends swapping those out for items, matters, or details.
Okay.
So saying, I have a few matters to handle this afternoon,
Yeah.
immediately elevates how capable you sound without, making you sound arrogant.
It's sort of like upgrading a photograph from standard definition to 4K resolution.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah, like you aren't changing the subject of the picture. The core message is exactly the same.
Right.
You're just bringing it into much sharper focus so that everyone in the room sees the exact same image you do.
That is a perfect way to visualize it. You're removing the blur. And this applies to phrases too. Instead of saying, let's find out, you say, let's determine.
Or instead of let's start or let's end, you use initiate or wrap up. There's one phrase swap in the text that really stood out to me. Instead of telling a colleague, explain this to me, the source suggests asking, could you walk me through this?
Yes.
Why does that small change make such a massive difference in how it's received?
Because it completely changes the power dynamic. Explain this to me can feel like a demand. It puts the other person on the defensive, like they have to justify themselves to you.
Oh, I see.
But walk me through this is collaborative. You're asking them to take you on a journey. You're stepping to their side of the table, and looking at the problem together.
I see the value there. But okay, I have to play devil's advocate for a second.
Go for it.
If I'm listening to this and I start swapping out all my normal everyday words for terms like suboptimal and determined and circle back, isn't there a real danger that I'm just going to sound like a corporate robot?
Yes, absolutely. If you only change your vocabulary and you completely ignore how you deliver those words, you will sound like a robot.
Or like someone just trying to sound superior.
Exactly. And that is why the second pillar is so crucial. Sharp vocabulary without the right emotional intelligence is just aggressive. So we have to talk about tone.
Let's get into tone then, because if we have these sharp 4K resolution words, how do we deliver them without cutting people down?
The source material describes professional tone as operating in this very specific narrow band. You need to be assertive, meaning you don't hide what you need or what you believe, but you also have to be highly respectful.
That sounds like a tough balance.
It can be, but the mechanism native professional speakers use to stay in this zone is something called softeners.
Softeners. Okay, these are the little cushion words, right?
Yeah.
Let's look at the examples, because they really show how you can completely alter the emotional impact of a sentence without changing the meaning.
Right.
So a blunt, weak way to communicate would be to just say, you're wrong about the budget.
Right, which instantly triggers a fight or flight response in the person hearing it. Their brain just shuts down to your ideas and focuses entirely on defending themselves. So the professional alternative uses a softener. You say, I see it a bit differently. Can I share my view on the budget?
Wow, yeah. It's very disarming. You're still communicating that they're incorrect, but you aren't attacking their ego at all.
Exactly.
Another example from the text is about asking for things. The direct approach is, send me the file now. But the professional approach is, could you send me the file when you get a chance?
Think of softeners like the shock absorbers on a car.
Okay, I'm tracking.
If you drive a car without shock absorbers, every single bump in the road sends this violent jolt into the cabin. The passengers get thrown around, they get uncomfortable, and they probably want to just get out of the car.
Right, it's a terrible ride.
But shock absorbers don't stop the car from moving forward at a high speed. They don't change the destination. They just absorb the friction so the ride is smooth.
Yeah.
Softeners do the exact same thing for workplace relationships.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting, though. What if you're listening to this and you come from a culture, or maybe you just have a personality type that really values directness?
That's a great point.
Yeah, some people might feel that adding phrases like, when you get a chance, or I see it a bit differently, is just being fake or hesitant. They might think, why can't I just say what I mean?
That is a very common pushback, especially in international business environments. But we have to separate being hesitant from demonstrating emotional intelligence.
Tell me more about that.
Well, softeners aren't about pretending you don't care. They are about recognizing human psychology. People just do not do their best work when they feel threatened.
Very true.
So using a softener isn't being fake, it's being strategic. You're choosing the delivery method that is most likely to get the result you want without damaging the working relationship.
So it's actually about efficiency, really. You avoid the 20-minute argument that happens when someone's feelings get hurt.
Exactly. But the source does offer a warning here about finding the Goldilocks zone.
Too much of a good thing.
Exactly. If you use too many softeners, you fall out of that narrow band and cross the line from respectful into weak.
Like, I think maybe this could possibly work. I'm not totally sure, though.
Yes, that is exactly what weakness sounds like. And the other extreme is arrogance, which sounds like, obviously, this is the only solution. Both of those extremes kill collaboration.
So what's the middle ground?
The professional middle ground relies on facts. You say, based on the data, I recommend this approach. You're confident, you're polite, but you still leave the door open for actual discussion.
Okay, so we've got our 4K vocabulary and we've got our shock absorbers installed for a smooth tone. But here is the next problem.
Let's hear it.
I've been in plenty of meetings where someone is using polite softeners and they have really decent vocabulary, but their ideas are just a jumbled, chaotic stream of consciousness.
Yeah, yes, thinking out loud.
Right, they're essentially just thinking out loud. And frankly, a polite tone doesn't save you if the listener has absolutely no idea what your point actually is.
And that brings us directly to the third pillar structure. Non-professional speech is really characterized by fragmented thoughts and half-finished sentences.
It's hard to follow.
It is, because when you speak like that, you are forcing the listener's brain to do all the heavy lifting. They have to collect all your random puzzle pieces and try to assemble the picture themselves.
Which is exhausting.
Professional speech removes that cognitive load. It uses recognizable patterns so the listener's brain can just relax and absorb the information.
And the centerpiece of this section in the source document is something called the PREP. Point, reason, example, point.
It's a lifesaver.
I want to walk through the exact scenario the text uses because it illustrates the mechanics of this so well. Imagine you're in a meeting and you have to deliver some bad news. You need to delay a product launch.
Oh, this is a high-stress moment. So structure is absolutely vital.
Yeah.
Using the PREP method, you start with the first P, the point. You state your core conclusion immediately in one clear sentence. I think we should delay the launch by a week.
Boom. No suspense.
Mm.
You aren't building up to a surprise ending.
Exactly. Then you move to R, the reason. Why do you believe that point? You say, the quality assurance team found 3 critical bugs yesterday.
Makes sense.
Then comes E, the example, where you provide concrete evidence. Specifically, there's a payment error that affected several test transactions.
And then you finish by looping back to the final P, the point. So, to avoid releasing something broken, a short delay makes sense.
When you structure an idea like that, you answer the listener's internal questions in the exact order they naturally arise.
What are we doing? Why are we doing it? Where's the proof?
Exactly. Okay, I understand the conclusion.
It really reminds me of giving someone a map before a road trip. If you just tell someone to get in the passenger seat and you start driving without telling them where you're going, their brain is going to be anxious.
Oh, for sure.
They're constantly looking out the window, guessing the destination. Every turn you take is a surprise. But if you show them the map first that's stating your point, they can just sit back and enjoy the ride.
That's a great analogy. And the source document actually pairs the PREP method with something called signposting, which fits perfectly with your map idea.
Signposting. These are the verbal turn signals, right? Words like to begin with or on top of that or to sum up.
Yes. They tell the listener exactly where you are on the map. If you say, I have 3 concerns. First, the listener's brain automatically creates 3 empty boxes, and they just wait for you to fill them.
That's powerful.
It makes you sound incredibly organized and prepared, even if you are entirely improvising your answer right on the spot.
I love that. Structure covers up a lot of improvisational panic. But let's shift gears a little, because even with a great map and smooth shock absorbers, there are potholes that can totally wreck the car.
The silent saboteurs.
Yes, the source document calls out these silent saboteurs' habits that instantly communicate unprofessional to whoever is listening.
The most glaring one, and honestly the one we all struggle with, is filler words. Basically.
Guilty as charged.
When you stack these up in a sentence, it doesn't even matter if your underlying idea is brilliant. The listener subconsciously assumes you don't really know what you're talking about.
And the fix the document suggests is kind of brutal in its simplicity. It says to just replace the filler word with a confident 1-second silent pause.
Just pause.
I have to be honest, as a person who talks for a living, that sounds terrifying. When I get nervous, I definitely use filler words. Why is it that a 1-second pause feels like an agonizing eternity to the person speaking, but to the listener it sounds brilliant?
It all comes down to the psychology of adrenaline and internal clocks. When all eyes are on you and you're speaking, your heart rate is slightly elevated. Your internal clock is spinning much faster than the people listening.
Oh, that makes sense.
You are also fighting the psychological fear of losing the floor, the anxiety that if you stop making noise for even a fraction of a second, someone is going to interrupt you and steal the microphone.
Totally.
So that 1 second of silence feels like a massive, terrifying void, and your instinct is to plug the hole with an
Because making noise just feels safer than silence.
Precisely. But the listener's clock is running at a normal, relaxed speed. To them, a 1-second pause doesn't sound like panic. It sounds like control. It
Wow.
shows that you are comfortable enough in your own skin to gather your thoughts. Silence projects authority. Filler words project panic.
Silence is control.
Yeah.
That is definitely going on a sticky note on my monitor. Now, the document also highlights a very specific set of potholes for non-native English speakers. These are direct translation errors.
Yes, and these are fascinating because they happen when someone logically maps the grammar of their native language directly onto English vocabulary.
Right.
But it ends up confusing the listener. For example, in many Romance languages, the structure for agreeing uses the verb to be. So a speaker will directly translate it and say, I am agree. But in English, we just use the verb directly, I agree.
Or they'll add unnecessary prepositions,
Yeah.
like saying, we need to discuss about the project.
Right. In English, discuss already implies about, so it's just discuss the project.
Got it.
Another common one is dropping the preposition when it is actually needed, like saying explain me instead of explain to me or explain it to me. And a classic one with age saying, I have 25 years instead of I am 25 years old.
These aren't moral failings. They're just grammatical speed bumps. If you clear them up, the friction disappears. There's another pothole mentioned. 2 weak intensifiers. This is when we feel like our point isn't landing, so we just start stacking adverbs on top of each other. Like, this is very, very, very important.
It actually dilutes the tact of what you're saying. The source suggests replacing those stacks of weak words with a single, precise, powerful word. Instead of very, very important, you just say critical.
And then there's the final saboteur, which I think is a symptom of imposter syndrome, trailing off at the end of a sentence, ending your thought with or whatever, or that is the sound of someone who has lost faith in their own idea halfway through saying it. They provide themselves an escape hatch so they can back out.
Right. If the listener doesn't like the idea, they can just say, well, I said, or whatever. But professionals don't do that. They finish their sentences with a clear, firm tone, even if they are expressing uncertainty. You don't trail off. You commit to the period at the end of the sentence.
Commit to the period. I really like that. So we've talked about how to upgrade our building blocks, manage our tone, structure our thoughts, and avoid the potholes. To wrap this deep dive up, I want to give the listener some real armor they can put on today. The source provides these fantastic plug-and-play frameworks, like formulas for everyday work scenarios.
These frameworks are absolute lifesavers because they remove the guesswork in high-stress situations. Let's look at introductions. Usually when we meet someone new at work, we just state our title. Hi, I'm Dave. I'm the IT director.
Right, which is pretty dry.
And it doesn't really tell the person how you can actually help them.
The source offers a much better formula. Name plus role plus one value statement. The example they give is fantastic. Hi, I'm Priya. I lead the design team here. I focus on making sure our product feels simple, even when the tech is complex.
Notice how that shifts the focus. It's not just about her title. It's about the value she brings to the room. It gives people a reason to remember her.
Definitely.
Another highly practical formula is for status updates. When a manager asks, how's the project going? The instinct is to either give a one-word answer or ramble for 5 minutes about every single thing you did that week.
And the framework stops the ramble. It's 4 simple steps. What's done, what's in progress, what's blocked, and what's needed.
So instead of rambling, you just say the design phase is complete, development is currently in progress and about 60% done. However, we are blocked right now waiting on API credentials from the client. We need those credentials by Thursday if we're going to hit the launch deadline.
It's so crisp. Anyone listening knows exactly where things stand and what action needs to be taken. But of all the formulas in the document, my favorite is how to handle the terrifying phrase, I don't know.
That's a big one.
Because when you're put on the spot and you don't have the data, the panic just sets in. People start guessing or making things up, which completely destroys their credibility.
The professional approach is to own the moment. The formula is simple. Acknowledge the question, state your intention to find the answer, and promise a follow-up.
Like, that's a great question. Let me look into it and get back to you by the end of the day.
Exactly.
It's such a relief to realize that being a professional doesn't mean you have to be omniscient. You don't have to carry an entire database in your head. Professionalism is about resourcefulness and reliability.
Yeah.
You admit you don't know, but you take ownership of finding out.
And when you actually follow up later with the answer, you build immense trust. You prove that your word actually means something.
So what does this all mean for you listening right now? If we step back and look at the big picture of this document, the takeaway is actually incredibly empowering. Sounding like a professional doesn't mean changing who you are or putting on a fake rigid persona.
Not at all.
It's simply about precision. It's upgrading vague words to sharp ones. It's using softeners to keep the emotional friction low. It's relying on structures like the PRP method to give your listener a map. And having the courage to use a 1-second pause instead of panicking with filler words.
These are practical tools designed to do one thing: ensure that your great ideas are actually heard and respected by the people around you, without getting lost in translation or emotional noise.
You're listening to this because you care about your growth and you have valuable things to say. These tools just clear the path so everyone else can recognize that value too.
I want to leave you with one final thought to mull over today as you go back to your work. Imagine your own workplace for a second. If every single person on your team committed to using the PREP method for their ideas and relied on those simple 4-step status updates, would your meetings be half as long? Or would you simply realize how few words we actually need to say to make a massive impact?
That is a brilliant question to end on. It's time to put away the heavy verbal tuxedo and just enjoy the precision of a well-tailored suit. Thank you so much for hanging out and learning with us today. We encourage you to try out just one thing we talked about. Maybe swap out the word stuff today or bravely test out that 1-second pause in your next meeting. Have a wonderful rest of your day, and we'll catch you on the next deep dive.